everyone. We have our coach here, the equivalent of Tim Waltz, right? So, uh, Jonathan out here is the founder of GTM AI Academy, and he's an expert in revenue excellence, enablement, acceleration. He has 15 years of experience, has been instrumental in doubling revenue for companies through innovative enablement strategies. By the way, he's also recognized as the leader in the field. So SEC's 2023 Enablement Ones to watch, and also an Enablement Legend by Seismic and the Enablement Squad. Wow. Welcome, Jonathan. Great to have you here.
Thanks, man. I appreciate very kind words of you. So good to see you again.
Yeah, good to see you as well. So let's get into it. You founded the GTM AI Academy in 2023, and the discussion today is AI-powered GTM frameworks, which is like for
Mhm.
hypergrowth, which is like the most, I think, buzzword compliant title we have. Right. So you're talking about using AI for go-to-market teams. So what inspired you to focus on AI-powered GTM frameworks, and how's that help you?
Yeah, quick story. So I was in sales for a long time. I won't tell you because that'll age me a bit, but I've been in sales a long time. Then I transitioned to enablement and been there for obviously a few years. And 4 or 5 years ago, the company I was with bought another AI tool that they would use and sell internally. And so the guy who literally built the AI model from scratch was the head guy over AI. And so he and I worked together a lot around enabling both the team and customers on what AI tech is and why they should use it and it's okay and kind of education piece. So I learned a ton from that experience. And then when ChatGPT came out, obviously I started nerding out because this guy was on this beta model test run of OpenAI. He was testing these models. He's like, "You've got to go check this out." So I started playing around with it. And at first, I was doing things like crazy cat poems about things in space and that kind of stuff with ChatGPT, dumb stuff. But then I started seeing the utility with it, and then I started diving into AI really deep. And I found that a lot of people weren't talking about um, kind of the utility of it in a business sense. Like there were some here and there about AI in sales that I saw, but besides that, no one's talking about how it helps with marketing, how it helps with RevOps, enablements, like all the other pieces of the go-to-market function. So originally, I was going to name it the Enablement AI Academy, but I changed it to GTM AI Academy because I was like, I can apply this everywhere. And literally, what I do in AI with both individuals, companies, and teams is the same thing I would do with enablement. It's just applying AI to it. Does that make sense? So, because I've worked with all these teams for years. So for me, I'm like, this is a nice, easy transition where I just get to do what I do in enablement. All I'm doing is AI powering it. So I'm just helping the teams do things better, faster, easier with AI. So hopefully that
Yeah,
gives you some context.
no, that is awesome. Let's deep dive into it. Like,
Yeah.
uh, Jonathan, as many examples as possible. Like, I think the listeners would be very excited about this. Like, can you talk about some of these frameworks? How you're applying AI? What are the results?
Oh gosh, I don't even know where to start. I'll give you a quick example from one of my sales teams that we did before a lot of other tools would come out. So Um, I I supported a sales team who spoke 3 different languages to customers that I did not speak. So I spoke English, they spoke English to me, but they went off and spoke Hindi, Spanish, and Portuguese, which I don't speak any of those. And so we were doing account research at the time, and now I wish I had Sprouts back then, honestly, because I was just using ChatGPT 4.0 when it first came out. But um, when when we first did this, we spent 2 days like going through like how to do account research and account plans and kind of setting up quota goals for the year, all that kind of stuff. 2 days of straight on training around this whole process, and we got maybe one account done in that 2 days. On the third day, I none of them had really seen what AI could do, so I literally shared my screen with one of the reps, and I had this prompt chain kind of built out already. I said, okay, I want you guys to all copy paste this. I put it into Slack. And I said, pick one of your companies that we haven't built out yet, like not the one we did yesterday, but a new one. And I said, I took them through this process where they built out an entire camp plan with AI in a half hour, all of them, and where it would have taken us 2 days before. Now it's again nowhere near the quality that Sprouts has, which again blows my mind. I saw the demo last week. I'm still like geeking out over Sprouts. But point is, even with that, what we had, which was not as good as Sprouts is, was way better than the 2 days of stuff we did before manually, So once they saw that, like we started applying AI everywhere. So I had this prompt library that I built for them that they could use in Spanish or Portuguese in ChatGPT because they can speak those languages, for account research, for discovery prep, for all the things they were doing. I even made a custom GPT that was built on that company's product information and methodology, so that if someone had a question of like, what do I ask this CFO at a bank at this stage of process, they go to the GPT and bam, it gives them the whole script of what they need to do and what to say and everything else because I trained it to do that. So it's a way that I can extend myself as an enabler using AI as my piece and speaking their language to help them in the place they need to be helped. Does that help? Hopefully.
Yeah, no, no, absolutely. Like let's go further, right? Like you're advising
Sure.
startups and stuff. So if there are listeners who are startups or like other scaled companies, what is the process of applying? Like, can you give us a step-by-step process of saying, hey, start with this, then do this. This is how you can apply a AI framework for GTM.
Across the teams, you mean? Like an AI enablement program?
Like
Or I just have to lead this?
I'm a 10 million revenue company, and I'm like, hey, coach, how do we put AI frameworks, GTM AI frameworks in our company? Can you like walk us through the playbook?
Yeah. So weirdly enough, and I don't know if you've seen the latest Boston Consulting Group around AI and sales, but they say the same thing, which I say, which is a lot of it is human change management type principles. It's not necessarily AI, funny enough. So for example, like there's I would to call 7 steps in an AI enablement program, but the first ones that you do with any tool, which is really identify what's the business objectives and how can we align. We want to make sure we have the goals very, very clear of what we're trying to accomplish before we do anything else. Then it's going to your current readiness. Like, are you ready for an AI tool? What's the gap analysis? Is that even the right position or place you need to be at? Um, that's step number 2. Number 3 is identifying specific use cases where AI could be measurable and bring value. Number 4 is develop and train your workforce to leverage whatever AI tech you're trying to get. After you've actually developed it and tested it, there's some sub pieces in there which I can get to. Number 5 is implement the AI solutions around change management principles to make sure people are adopting it and it's user friendly. Number 6 is monitoring and optimizing the full potential. And 7, expand and scale across the organization. So I like doing pilot programs a lot. But most of the time, it's like all these things I just talked about, I would do with any tech. It doesn't matter if it's AI or not. It's just specifically applied to AI. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So does that help with your frameworks? Hopefully.
Yeah, it'll be great to get a link to the report. I would share it in the LinkedIn Live so people to read it, right? Like this is the
Sure.
BCG report you said, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's not a report actually. I did post about it, so I'll give it to you in the private chat right there
Yeah.
that people can go to if you want to see more info. Um, but there's a lot of sub steps in it. But like I said, when you read all the research and the data coming out now, a lot of it's talking about how humans are adapting to AI, which is a change management behavior engineering question. It's not an AI question, you know, which to me is like that's what I've done for 10 years. So it's a easy thing to think about. But what I think the biggest thing is that it's easy for anybody on any stage to get the um, shiny object syndrome and say, "Hey, we got to get an AI tool," before they really understand what the problem is. So I think that when they understand that they have a pipeline issue, or they
Yeah.
have a discovery problem, or they have whatever the case is, it's really starting at what's the business objectives, what's the metrics we're trying to leverage, and then look at the particular AI tool so you don't bombard yourself with all these tools that may not work together in a way that helps you move forward. So
Yeah. No, makes a ton of sense. So where have you seen, like which stages have you seen the maximum value? Like ICP, building a data list.
oh gosh. That's a good question because in the academy, I talk about all the roles across the entire customer journey. So, um, I mean, we could talk about any part of the bow tie as an example, like the very first part of it with marketing and finding ICP fit and persona feedback, that kind of stuff. You can iterate so much faster now, where you could get feedback on. You can play with an AI on messaging, on how things are going, and banter back and forth. And I could make an iteration. Like I'll give you an example. In my MBA program, I was in a marketing class, and 5 of us, me included, took us a month to build an ICP persona process with messaging and positioning, all this other stuff as part of the marketing class. When ChatGPT came out, I was curious. I'm like, I wonder if I could do this with ChatGPT. And I built one out in like an hour. And it was just as good or better than what we did in a month with 5 of us MBA level people, you know?
Yeah.
So just the sheer speed and then be able to iterate and get feedback on it. I don't think we know truly the consequences, the positive consequences of how fast things are going and what that does as a result for the power of decision making, insight, change of strategy, like all this stuff are things that we've haven't had before, you know? So top of funnel, I mean, Sprouts is a great example. Like be able to take all these different data sources and be able to put in one spot so you make decisions and see things way faster you could have done before. I mean, I come from the old sales days where I call people out of yellow pages. That was my directory. I didn't have Zoom info. I didn't have anything else. I had the phone book.
Yeah.
And now where we are now is like it's light years different. Another way is just in the customer experience when you think about any AI, like again, we've talked about this before. Like I work with Momentum, but what it does is it extrapolates data from conversations, and there's a lot of times where humans are required to be the data source. When you think about throughout the customer journey, customer success, salespeople, most people require meetings to get the data they need about customers because that's the only way they can get the data is from the brains of the person working with the customer, right? And when you have AI now that can join calls and extrapolate all the information and then disperse it to wherever it needs to go to the CRM or into Slack or into a report all automatically for you. And then it's actually it's accessible to anyone at any time. Because, like, as an example, would be as enablement in the past, I'd have marketing teams come to me and say, what the heck are customers saying in sales calls? Even though we had Gong or Sales Loft, they didn't have the time to go watch 50 calls. They were asking me because I'm the one who watched the calls because I could help communicate. Now I can put AI in place of me instead of me being the data source. AI's there and they can access that at any time and ask any marketing question they want to ask, or RevOps or enablement or whatever. Um, from an enablement perspective, I see so many applications from training to personalized coaching to competency models. Like everything I do in enablement, I can do with AI better, which is fascinating. So, to say which one's most impactful, all of them are. So it kind of depends. Yeah.
And Jonathan, talk to us about the 0 to 1, 1 to 10 journeys you've had, and what is the difference between them? Like 0 to 1, 1 to 10, 10 to 50, 50 to 100.
You mean as in
Revenue.
revenue number? Okay.
Like, how should people be thinking when they're in the 0 to 1 mode? What should they be thinking about? How do they enable
Yeah.
that versus 1 to 10? Like, there's
Yeah.
a
Most of the time I mean, you probably know this as well as I do, but for people who haven't been there, it's really about getting your ICP persona, messaging, product market fit really lined in, and also the go to market function. Are you product led? Are you enterprise grid? Are you partner led? Like what's the motion and how you're working is really getting that clear. And again, with AI, you can either use it for an iterative process, getting feedback. Um, but I think really fine tuning and understanding who are you really working with and how is it resonating or not, because a lot of people who I talk to who are sub 1 million, that's where they're trying to figure out, like, where are we winning, are we fitting the message, is the message hitting the ICP, have we even found the ICP? 1 to 10 is more about kind of starting to be, I call it the foundation building time. I've been in 4 companies where I've been from sub 10 million all the way up to 75 plus.
it's just jumping in here, right? Like zero to
Yeah.
one. How do you figure out ICP? Like, a lot of these founders would be like, hey, uh, everyone says figure out ICP, figure out ICP. How do we do that? Like, we don't really know who we're going to
Yeah.
sell.
It's a good question. I think it's a lot of people do research, which again, I would leverage AI as much as possible because it can be a phenomenal kind of research partner. But a lot of it is just researching and getting feedback. The other part too that I find is a lot of founders usually have a software or technical background, so they talk a lot of product speak and not enough about the problem. And so when you get really clear on what the problem is you're solving, it makes the conversation around any feedback you're getting a lot more clear versus saying, hey, we have this cool tech, this cool feature. What do you think? It's now saying, we see this problem. This is how we approach this problem versus anybody else. And then get feedback from that, because that, I think, kind of helps you make that fit. As far as the ICP, it's really, again, AI is an amazing tool for this, but like it's getting out there, getting conversation, getting feedback, because until someone gives you money, you don't know if you have a good product or not. When someone gives you money, then you're like, now we're hit it. So money is obviously the obvious marker. So when someone's willing to put their card down and be like, give it to me, that's when you know you have a good fit, and when it starts building momentum from that space. So I don't know if that helps at all, but like I have and on a deeper level, I'm happy to share it with whoever's listening. But I have a massive AI prompt around building ICP that helps with this whole process, to help you think about messaging and testing and get feedback and all this kind of stuff. But I'm a big fan of not waiting for perfection, which I know most founders are, and just getting it out there and getting feedback and adjust as fast as necessary. Um, and one last thing I'll say is find those people, whether it's like myself or others who are involved in the space, both from an AI perspective and a practitioner moment, so they can tell you kind of the feedback on saying, I like this, but you guys need to shift it to this because no one's here, and a lot of people, AI role plays one example. There's so many people in AI role play that every time I talk to them, I'm like, you got to figure out a different angle because there's 30 of these tools. So how do you stand out? And everyone thinks that their tech is the best ever. And I'm like, it's not. I've seen your same tech 40 times. Tell me why you're different.
Right,
So it's being willing to hear the bad news sometimes.
right, right.
Yeah.
Awesome. So you're saying you have a prompt list which you can share, and you're saying just a lot of it is like who pays for you. That's a good indicator, right? Like someone pays for
Yeah.
your product. That's a good one. Okay. And so once you figured out your PMF, let's go to the 1 to 10 journey. Uh, what are the key
Yeah.
KPIs, and what have you seen as the most important things to watch out for a setup to be successful?
I'm probably biased because I am an enablement professional, but I think this is where the foundation building of systems, process, clarity, communication, documentation is all key, because usually at this range is when people start to go from your core 5 to 10 to 20, 30 people up to a different range where you're starting to hire externally new people from other companies that want to grow with you. And they don't have the tribal knowledge that all this people have that has built it up to $1 million. So they don't have that. So having a way to systematize it, which is all the boring stuff like documenting, your processes and the knowledge, which again, AI is another amazing application for this, because you can literally say, I need help documenting this thing, this process, these tools, this whatever. And having more of that so it becomes more orderly. It's really easy to get again, I hate the word use momentum again, but I'm going to. A lot of momentum is stifled because of the internal processes not being clear, and the new people can't find their feet, and it takes longer than it needs to get up and running. The faster you can get your team who you're onboarding up and running and the customers up and running, the better. So it's smoother, it's faster, and you don't have all these questions of like, time is the enemy when it comes to 1 to 10. You've got to scale as fast as possible. And unless you're willing to put in the boring work of documenting and clarifying and making sure you know who does what where, and that's communicated to everybody, it's the basics around team and messaging. That's from an internal perspective. From an external perspective, I'd say that it's a lot about, it's starting to um, narrow the scope, because I think a lot of times in 0 to 1, you're kind of shooting in the dark saying, does this work? Does this work? Does this work? But after you get to the 1 to 10, it's when you start to narrow. You say, we do this for this group and that's all we do. It's really easy to get distracted and say, but this new persona wants this cool tech, so we could build it and maybe that'll make us some money because they might buy it. It's easy to go down that path. You got to stay super focused on saying, here's our message, here's our product, here's our people, go double down and get it done. That more focus is crucial at the growing point. Does that
And
help?
yeah, no, that's great. And like you said, right, it's easy to get distracted.
Yeah.
Uh, who's the person who brings you back? Like, sometimes it's like the founders are always optimistic, and the natural optimism in them make them say, "Hey, we can do more." Like they're always trying to disrupt, and so the natural thing is like go for more, right? So who's the guy who'll be like, "No, come back. Like, don't go there right now." So who's that kind of person in the organization?
Usually it's a CTO or a CFO or someone kind of holding you back a bit, going, hang on, guys, before you overwhelm my team, let's talk about this.
Right.
Um, this kind of goes down to, I'm a big fan of first principles thinking, and also I'm an ex Franklin Covey person, which means that I'm a big believer in, when you have more than 3 goals at a time, you're kind of spinning your wheels. You think like you're accomplishing a lot, but you're not really. So it's really being really clear on what is the big goal for this year, what revenue usually is the goal, and what are the 3 main things we're going to do to get there, and that's all we're going to do. And that doesn't mean you don't adjust as you need to, but it's saying these 3 things are the 3 things we're going to focus on for this 1 year. until we get to a point where there's been enough feedback that maybe we need to shift those three things. But the goal is always the same. Like it's usually a revenue number. So it's being willing to change, but also understanding what you would need to know in order to change. Does that make sense? Because I think what most people do is
Yeah.
they change without thinking about the consequences. And that has a lot of consequences on the entire team who's working on this, thinking of, I thought we were going this direction, you know? Same with the customers. They're like, I thought you were doing this, and now you're doing this. Like, what? I don't want that, you know? So it's just being really clear on where you're at and also being clear on when you would change that direction or those goals or those priorities. Does that help?
Yeah. Yeah. No,
Yeah.
that makes a lot of sense. Next thing, right? Like, wanted to discuss this. Like, with the proliferation of AI, everyone can write a good email, which is in a sense good. But the
Yeah.
thing is, now you don't know the diamonds from the lemons, right? Like,
Yeah.
your email box is so saturated that instead of trying to figure out which are the best products, you just give up. Like, I'm gonna just give up. I'm not gonna test any of these. We'll just do, like, our own research and reach out to whosoever we want to reach out to.
Yeah.
And like, email response rates across, and this is like being talked about by everyone. Email
Yeah.
response rates, and we have seen that with our customers as well. Email responses have dropped, right? And
Yes.
so, what are your thoughts on that? Like, how do you see the new world GTM evolving? Which are the channels which are going to be the most lucrative? Where should people spend time? Or how do you like still get, like, we still get responses to emails? It's just like it's become easier to generate, but also the response rates have got dropped. So it's kind of like balance it out.
It's a really good question. I don't know if I have the answer for it, but my gut is telling me that it's going to be going more some sort of operationalization of dark social of some kind.
Mm,
Um, because right now, like legit, what happens, and I've talked to CEOs about this all the time, is like what happens is someone's a member of some paid membership or group, or they're in some sort of Slack channel, or they're in some sort of industry thing, and they hear about a tool through that lens
mm,
at a conference. And then they ask their friends about it who may have tested it. And then they get all these conversations that happen. And then they go into the sales process for the tool. And the tool thinks, cool, we have a website visitor. They did this thing. When in reality, this whole other conversation has been going on for 3 months that they can't track or attribute, you know? So
very interesting.
it's and I can say that about multi 6 figure to 7 figure deals that all started from someone who did a lot of research and background from their own trusted network before they ever got into the sales process. So when they actually did talk to someone, it was because they already talked to trust. Because a lot of people in general are relying on the people they trust
Yeah.
as the source of saying, should I even look at this tool to begin with? And the hard part is that a lot of times some tools, because they're new, people don't know about. So like, I don't know, I've never seen this tool. Like a lot of AI tools have that problem. Like no one's used them. It's getting different as now AI is getting more adapted, but there's still a lot of times where tech, like Sprouts is another example. I didn't know about Sprouts until very recently, and I'm in deep the AI space, you know. And it's not because of, I mean, probably because I'm just overwhelmed because there's bajillions of tools coming out all the time, but it's literally just understanding like, where should I go? Which also goes back to the same issue of saying, what's the problem? Like, what are you trying to solve? Is this even the right tool to get? You know, and then it's kind of narrowing down from the problem state instead of just saying, well, all these tools are here because it is very, very easy to get overwhelmed with stuff. Does that make
That
sense?
is super interesting. So you're saying, and I mean, it makes a ton of sense, right? Like, couple of service companies come to us, and we always tell them, hey, in services, it's all about the trust network, right? So
Yep.
figure out where your existing customers are moving to, like job changes, champions moving jobs, or like, events, or like get plugged into these trust networks where people can recommend you. You're saying it's kind of like that'll become a norm more and more for everyone, whether it's product or service.
Yeah.
Which-
Yeah.
Can we?
It's even like, I'll give you an example, which is I'm a part of a couple of influencer campaigns on LinkedIn. So I'll be an advisor for a company. I'll make a post about them, or I'm paid to make a post or whatever. But I only do that if I genuinely think that I like the tech or whatever. And when I do, the companies come back to me and said, "Hey, we had 10 people from your post alone who came to us. Now 4 of them are in demos." Like, but there's no way to track that unless the person said on the call, "Hey, I saw a coach's post." Blah. If they didn't say that, they'd have no idea they came from my post. Does that make sense? So that can't be attributed. But that stuff happens all the time. When someone on LinkedIn just says, "Hey, I found this freaking cool tool of this the thing that does this whatever," and they're like, "That's amazing." Or like for example, the GTM AI Academy demo library. I have 40 demos in there. I know for a fact I have 200 people in there who've looked at those demos and they're being shot over to different teams. But what they do is they go to the website, which then goes to a demo, and they don't know it came from my demo library. Does that make
Yeah.
sense? So there's all these inner networks and places that people are going to find out information that from any founder's lens, like, cool, we got a website, demo request. But it's like, no, no, no. There's a whole other thing that went in the background. And the question really is, how can you influence those conversations in the dark social world as best you can? Which is a whole other topic we get into. But it's that I think that's the question to ask is like, how do I help influence the people who have influence to get to me? Does that make sense in my space?
Yeah, no, and this is super interesting. I think this is really the thing which everyone is struggling with, and I think this is the most relevant topic. So, like you were saying, how do you attribute that? Attribution could be easy, like you put a discount code saying, "Hey, use this discount
Right.
code," and
Yeah.
and then they know that that's specific to
Right.
you, right? So that could be a way to doing that. But
Yeah.
like, yeah, we saw like companies like Clay, which have exploded in the last 6 to 12 months. A lot
Right.
of it is like influencer-led activity,
Yes.
right? And
There's a lot of teams on influencer led. Like Win has, Hyperbound did, Clay has. Like there's a bunch we've done. Replicate. I can name tons of them off that's on the influencer route. So
right. So yeah, no, and I've dealt with influencers on the B2C side in the past. I was leading go to market for Disney Plus,
yeah,
and I think it's coming to B2B world. A lot of that, like you now have real influencers,
I
especially on
agree.
LinkedIn. I think
Yeah,
LinkedIn is the influencer channel of choice right now
yeah,
in the world. So interesting that, and you think getting plugged into these communities, these private communities, right? Where people have this trust network. How do you get plugged into those? Like, do you just buy membership? Because a lot of these communities say, "Hey, we are anti, like, don't be salesy." So how do you be salesy without being salesy?
yeah. It's a good question. I think this is going to sound kind of strange, but I'm in a couple of enablement specific communities where I'm in it because I am an enablement professional. So I'm in it so I can both learn and then to give. And a lot of times it's just part of a natural conversation where people are like, "Hey, does anyone have something that will do this thing?" And I'll be like, "Hey, I know three people." Bam, bam, bam. And I'd have no skin in the game because I don't work with them. I'm saying I just know a tool. That becomes the dark social where I can help influence those things. So it's not necessarily that you need to be inside of those companies or in those communities yourselves. It's more that you have a champion who's doing it for you. Does that make sense? Because it's all about, for me, third party validation is massive in marketing because if I work for a company or if I am even affiliated, getting an affiliate link for it, which I could be in these situations, they don't know. But my point is, if I know, hey, this is a cool tech, I think it's good. I have no reason to tell you this except for I think it's good. There's
Mhm.
trust there. Does that make sense? Versus having you as a CEO, if you were in these communities saying, hey, Sprouts is awesome, of course you can say that because you're the CEO. Like, duh. But they're looking for an objective point of view. There's someone like myself or somebody else who can say, this is a KK tool. Go check it out. I have no other reason to tell you this except for I think it's just a KK tool. Does that make sense? So I
Yeah,
would say it's all about how do you make sure you can have those champions in the communities you're trying to go after to talk for you when those conversations come up that you're not in the room for. Does that make
right.
sense?
Yep, absolutely. And
Yeah.
we if those could be customers, that's even better because they're like, "Hey,
Yeah.
I use it and I love it." Right? It's
Yeah.
in credibility. Uh,
Totally.
in fact, we had a discussion and we were discussing about like if you have like fans and like raving fans who are customers, take them with you, pay for them to come to you conferences or events with you,
Yeah.
and they are like
Absolutely.
buddies.
Yeah. Freaking Salesforce all day yesterday for their Dreamforce had customer after customer after customer all day long talking about the new Agent Force thing. So, yes, absolutely. Everyone does that. You should be doing that.
Great. So, Jonathan, this was exciting. I think this social dark funnel. I think we need to have probably another conversation, a deeper conversation on that.
Probably.
But this is fantastic and great to have you over. One last thing, we have a minute or 30
Yeah.
seconds. Uh, in this AI enabled world, how does that change hiring for SDRs, BDRs, AEs? Like, are you looking for certain skill sets now which you were not looking for, let's say, 2 years back?
Good question. The answer is yes. and it is specifically around AI. It's understanding like how they understand AI or not. Um, it's easy for me to enable someone on AI, but if someone already has a basic understanding and a workflow that includes it, AI is part of the workflow, human in the loop, as they say, and they've done it successfully in the past, I want that because I know for a fact that that person will be at least 50% more productive and better results than the person who's not already has an AI enabled workflow. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So the more that someone already knows how to do it, they have a good quality stuff, and I can see the results of it, the better. The hard part is that very few people actually have a workflow set up because everyone's still trying to figure all this out. So it's
Awesome.
like it's rare. They're diamonds in the rough. It'll be more common as we go, but it's still pretty rare when you have someone goes, I use this tool, this tool, this tool, in this way, this way, this way, and it works like this. Like very few people can say that. When they do, I'm like, you're awesome. Come on, come talk to me.
Awesome. Thanks, Jonathan.
Cool.
Great having you here.
Thank you so much.